Om Sadashivasamārambhām Shankarācārya-madhyamām
Yamam
Madhācārya-paryantāಂ
Asmadacharya
Vande
Paryantam Vande
Guru-paramparam.
Guru Paramparam.
Om
Om
Sahanavavatu
Sahanavavatu
Sahanau
Sahanau Bhunaktu
Sahaviryan
Sahaviryam
Karavavahay
Karavavahe
Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma
Tejasvinavadhitamas
Vidvishavahay.
Vidvishavahay
Om Shanti
Om
Shanti
Shanti
Shanti.
Shanti.
Tat Sat. So we had completed 8th Anuvaka, and today we are on the 9th Anuvaka. So I'll ask Arvindji to just chant out the entire 9th Anuvaka.
I guess he forgot to tell you he's not in town for 3 weeks.
Oh, okay. Right, fine. Then let me just do it myself. Okay. This is Anuvaka number 9. It's called Swadhyaya Prashamsa, the in praise of Swadhyaya. So we'll chant. I'll lead and you can chant with me. Rhythm cha Swadhyaya Pravachane cha.
Ritam cha swadhyaya pravachane cha
Satyam cha Swadhyaya Pravachane cha.
Satyam cha swadhyaya pravachane cha
Tapascha Swadhyaya Pravachane cha.
Tapascha swadhyaya pravachane cha
Damascha Swadhyaya Pravachane cha.
Damascha swadhyaya pravachane cha
Shamascha Swadhyaya Pravachane cha.
Shamascha swadhyaya pravachane cha
Agnyascha Swadhyaya Pravachane cha.
Agnyascha swadhyaya pravachane cha
Agnihotram cha Swadhyaya Pravachane cha.
Agnihotram cha swadhyaya pravachane cha
Athityascha Swadhyaya Pravachane cha.
Athityascha swadhyaya pravachane cha
Manusham cha Swadhyaya Pravachane cha.
Manusham cha swadhyaya pravachane cha
Praja cha Swadhyaya Pravachane cha.
Praja cha swadhyaya pravachane cha
Prajanascha Swadhyaya Pravachane cha.
Prajanascha swadhyaya pravachane cha
Prajatischa Swadhyaya Pravachane cha.
Prajatischa swadhyaya pravachane cha
Satyamati Satyavacharathittarah.
Satyamiti satyavacharāthitara
Satyamiti Satyavacharathittarah.
Satyamiti satyavacharāthitara
Tapa iti tapo nitya paurishishtihi.
Iti tapo nitya praushishtihi
Swadhyaya pravachane eveti nako maudgalyah.
Swadhyaya pravachane evateti nako maudgalahyah
Tadhi tapas tadhi tapah.
Tapas tadvipaha.
Okay. So now we are on the 9th Anuvaka. All right, just 1 minute. As the title says, it's This is one of those Anuvakas which is talking about the various upasanas and the various, what do you call, benefits that come out of the upasanas. Now in the upasanas, there are many upasanas, right? You have countless number of upasanas, and some of them you will find in the Veda itself, some of them you will find in the Bhagavatam, some of them you will find in the Puranas. So both Shrauta upasanas and Smartha upasanas are there. Wherever we use the word Shrauta, it refers to upasanas given in the Vedas. Shrauta is from the word Shrutihi, and Smartha is from the word Smritihi. So wherever you say that a Smartha upasana, it's either the Bhagavatam or the Puranas. Though it was traditional to practice all the Vedic upasanas, that has gone out of practice. And therefore, today most of us don't practice any of the Vedic upasanas because, frankly, unless you are actually studying the Shastram, you don't realize that the upasanas are given there. And there are various upasanas given in dhyana slokas also, or various prayers, right? What Tanmay, for example, is teaching, that is also dhyana sloka upasana. So you have a choice now. You can practice the upasanas which are given in the Puranas or in the Bhagavatam, or you can practice the Ishtadevata upasanas from the various dhyana slokas. But Vedas do talk about upasanas, and as Vedic students, even if we are not actually practicing them, we should be having some knowledge. And therefore, this Taittiriya Upanishad has talked about the importance of upasanas also, importance of karma also. What did we say upasana was? We said upasana was saguna, dhamma, vishaya, manasa, karma. That is the mental activity associated with the subject of saguna Brahman. That is the technical definition of upasana. Any mental activity cannot be called upasana, because if you do that, then even worrying is a mental activity, right? So the mental activity, the thoughts which are associated with saguna Brahman, that alone can be called upasana. Another point we need to remember is you can have karma without upasana, but you can never have upasana without karma. And therefore, in the name of upasana, as a Vedic student, we should not neglect karma yoga. Karma yoga is classified into what? Into those which are beneficial to others. So we call it para upkara karma, karmani, para upkara karmani, those which are beneficial to others. Then there's a second category called para udasana karmani. So it's indifferent to others. It may be beneficial to me, but it is indifferent to others. And there is para apakara karmani, that which handles, that which harms others. And we have seen these three classifications in the Bhagavad Gita also. Those karmas which are beneficial to others mostly, it may include you, but they are more beneficial to others. They are called sattvika karma. And we saw in the Bhagavad Gita that the more number of people who are benefited, the more sattvika the karma is. Then there is rajasika karma, where nobody is harmed, but the benefits are mostly for me and my family, but there is nobody else harmed. So that is the second type, which here we call para udasana karma. Udasana means indifference to others. Then para apakara karmani is tamasika karma, harming others. Okay. In fact, wherever you talk about para apakara karma which harms others, there again you can classify into two types. One is where there is deliberately the action is undertaken, knowing fully well that it harms others. And there are actions also where you have to do that action, but that action is not avoidable. Even if you know that there is some harm to other living beings, that action is not avoidable at all. And these are called suna karma. It's a very important word, suna karma, right? And it is to address suna karma that we have all the prayaschitta karma in the Upanishads. And in the Upanishads, we talked about Brahma Yajna, the study of the scriptures. And this Taittiriya Upanishad also will talk about Daivi Sampatti values. So both values and the spiritual part of it, Brahma Yajna part of it, both are important. And this is what the general trend of this Upanishad is. Now look at the first line, Ritam cha Swadhyaya Pravachanecha. So rhythm is a very, very technical word, which means Yatha Shastram, Yatha Kartavya. You are going to do the action Yatha Shastram, as prescribed by the Shastram, right? The Shastram prescribes certain actions. You have to understand them properly, and then only can you do those actions. Those are called rhythms. Yatha Shastram, Tatha Karma. Whatever is done according to the Shastram, in accordance with the spiritual instructions, they are called rhythm. So there are two things involved here, proper understanding of the spiritual instructions. So rhythm, that understanding is very, very necessary. Remember, the word rhythm is often translated as truth, but in this context, the word rhythm, the first word of this Anuvaka, it means that you have studied the Shastram from a guru, from a teacher, and the Shastram has been properly understood. Unless that understanding is there, your life will be more arthakama predominant. And if you want the life to be more spiritual, dharma, moksha predominant, then rhythm, the proper understanding of the scriptures is necessary. Swadhyaya means study of dharma shastra. So Shankaracharya gives the meaning as adhyananam. Two meanings are there. One is the study of the dharma shastra and learning to chant the Veda also. So Swadhyaya means two things, learning to chant. In the chanting, there is no understanding of the meaning, no arthajnanam. So we call it simply shabda grahanam, just grasping the words. That is called adhyayanam, learning to chant the Veda. And the second part is pravachanam. Pravachanam has two parts, which Shankara describes, adhyapanam and brahma yajnaha. So this is what the Veda is telling you, that after having learnt the Veda, after having learned to chant also, then what should you do? Pravachanam, adhyapanam. Teaching others to chant is necessary. So having learned from some acharya, from having learned from your acharya, you have to communicate this skill, this chanting skill to others, so that the Veda is propagated, sharing with the future generations. And this is something which is asked of all of us. All those who are Vedic students, Veda says this is a duty. And such people are called dharma brahmanas. So that is one meaning. After having learned, teach. And the second meaning of pravachanam, Shankaracharya writes Brahma Yajna. Brahma Yajna is ritualistic Brahma Yajna. So thanksgiving to the Shastram and to Ishvara. Right? For that, chanting is necessary. Okay, now talking about chanting, remember that Veda expects that each person should chant his Veda. Like everybody has one Veda, right? Some people are Yajurvedis, some people are Samavedis. Everybody initially had a Veda, and Veda expected that Veda should be chanted every day. Now it is no longer possible. So we saw earlier in another Upanishad that Brahmaji extracted the essence of the three Vedas, and that was called Gayatri Mantra. So Gayatri Mantra chanting is equivalent to Veda Parayana. Similarly, for Bhagavad Gita chanting, the 66th verse of the 18th chapter, Sarvadharman Parityajya, if you can't chant the Gita at all, then Sarvadharman Parityajya is a chant which is said to include the entire Gita. And similarly, there is a chant for Vishnu Sahasranamam. Anybody is aware? What is that particular line?
Shri Rama Rama.
Yes, Tanmay?
Shri Rama Rama Rameti.
Shri Rama Rama Rama. So these are all I'm not saying this is all that you should do. Okay, these are all said to be shortcuts in case you have no time. At least this you should do every day. Similarly, we have other Vedic texts, Sri Rudram, Purusha Suktam. All this is to be recited regularly. And after having learned to chant, you should also teach. Note that the words Swadhyaya and Pravachanam are used in this sense, and Pravachanam is used in second sense of teaching also. But if you look at it from your own point of view, there is a difference between Swadhyaya and Pravachanam. Swadhyaya is the learning part of it, the learning to chant part of it. Pravachanam here is the regular chanting. That meaning also can be taken. Okay, so that is the first part of the Anuvaka. Then we go to the second part of the Moolam, Satyam cha Swadhyaya Pravachanecha. Now the Swadhyaya and Pravachanecha, that is there in every one of these lines. So the meaning remains the same as that which I've just explained, learning to chant, teaching and chanting regularly. Two things are there. Okay, then Satyam has two meanings. Satyam cha Swadhyaya Pravachanich. One is the normally accepted one, which is what Satyam Vada, speak the truth. And the other one, which is also more relevant here, this Satyam means living your life in accordance with rhythm. Okay, so the rhythm and Satyam have to be connected. Rhythm is prior understanding the Shastram, and after understanding the Shastram, Satyam is implementing those instructions, living your life in accordance with what has been taught to us. So that is rhythm cha Swadhyaya Pravachanecha, Satyam cha Swadhyaya Pravachanecha. Then Tapascha Swadhyaya Pravachanecha. Tapaha is, these are all very common definitions, willful self-denial. What is the purpose? To establish that I have a mastery over my indriyas. How should I know whether I am the master of my indriyas or the indriya are my master? And therefore, once in a while, I have to learn to say no to what I love to do, what I regularly do. And when I say no, that is not the only thing. After I say no, I have to examine my mind and see what is happening in my mind. If my mind is disturbed, supposing I like to eat rasagulla every day, one rasagulla every day. It's not good at this age, especially, but supposing you like. And then you say no one day, what is the state of your mind? Does it accept? Or for the rest of the day, does the mind only dwell on the rasagulla? Okay. If the mind is only dwelling on the rasagulla for the rest of the day, it is a red signal. What does it indicate? Why is it a red signal?
Indicate attachment.
It indicates that there is an attachment to a particular entity or a particular object, and without that object, without that attachment, I am not happy. And therefore, the whole idea is that Shastram has taught us time and again that your objects are only reflecting medium for the happiness. If that object is not there, the reflected happiness is not there. But the mind should not get disturbed because it should know that the happiness is basically Atma Ananda only. And therefore, I should take steps by regularly disciplining the mind so that at one point of time, the mind begins to accept that, yes, I have to do without rasagullas for extended periods of time. And then only I will be able to. That ability not to have something, the ability not to have something is the prime criteria for having something. It's a very, very important statement. If you can do without something, then you are eligible to possess that something. Because doing without that something is very important. And therefore, once in a while, say no to whatever you love to do. And if your mind is disturbed, begin a series of austerities, tapaha, to ensure the mind is regularly deprived of that. Right? Remember, it has to be willful. If it is enforced by somebody else, it is suppression. Suppression is never discipline. Suppression is always oppression. And therefore, suppression, oppression, and depression, they all go together. If you are suppressed, then you're oppressed. If you're oppressed, then you are depressed. And therefore, willful is the key over here. Remember that this tapaha, this should be entirely of your own free will. It should not be imposed upon you by your teacher or even by Shastra. You should be able to say no out of absolutely free will. What are the most popular rhythms? Rhythm is basically tapaha. It's an austerity measure. What are the most popular ones? There are two. Upavasa and Maunam. Both deal, Upavasa is what? Fasting. Maunam is what? Silence. Both deal with the same indriya, the tongue. Different functions, but it deals with vak indriya only. Why? Because they say that if the tongue is mastered, it is easy to master all the other indriyas. And that is why the tongue, is so active that in the middle of 32 teeth, it keeps dancing about and yet never gets hurt. So that kind of a strong, indriya which you have to learn to master. Then damascha swadhyaya pravachanacha. We have seen all this earlier in Tattva Bodha. Damaha is sensory discipline. Indriya nigraha. And again, the control is always voluntary, never suppression. What is the standard for Damaha? Avoid asuri sampatti, encourage daivi sampatti. If you want to know what they are, care of Bhagavad Gita. Okay, asuri sampat and daivi sampat, both are care of Bhagavad Gita. Then, shamascha swadhyaya pravachanacha. So Shankara gives a very beautiful definition for shamaha. He says antakarana upashamaha. Upashamaha means withdrawal or filtering or restraining. Therefore, shama is restraining the antakaranam, filtering the thoughts. So thought discipline, right? And if you have thought discipline, then you will have word discipline also, because it's like an iceberg. What shows on top is 1/9, 8/9 the iceberg is below water. And so words are only a reflection of the thoughts. At the thought level, when the idea is overflowing, it overflows into words. So one of the examples that somebody quoted to me was, when the termite appears on your dining table, what should you conclude? What is the inference from there?
The wood is rotten from inside.
Yeah, the
It has affected the inside.
termites have completely, what they call, permeated the whole table, and therefore, then only they will appear. Similarly, when your ideas are saturated in the mind, then they appear in the form of words, and therefore, word discipline can be achieved by thought discipline. And this is what Shankara says, antakarana upashamaha. Shamaha. Shamaha is watching the thoughts, ensuring that thoughts don't take over, the irregular thoughts, the unwelcome thoughts don't take over your mind. Then Agniyascha Swadhyaya Pravachanacha. Okay, so Agni here has a very particular technical meaning, and let me try to explain. When a Vaidika gets married, when a person who follows the Veda gets married, he is supposed to initiate many rituals. Okay. I think I've talked about this earlier also, but anyway, once more. From the marriage fire, a stick of fire from the marriage kunda fire, a stick is taken and taken to his house, right? And from that stick, a fire is kindled in the house. So this fire is called Smartha Agni. Smartha Agni. Okay. And this Smartha Agni has to be preserved in the house, which means it cannot be, you cannot allow it to die. It has to be continuously lit. And within another 6 months of the marriage, that is, the Smartha Agni can at the most run for 6 months. But within 6 months from that Smartha Agni, he has to kindle another fire, which is called a Shrauta Agni. So Shrauta Agni is basically to be lit from the Smartha Agni. The Smartha Agni is to be lit from the wedding fire, right? From the Vivaha Agni. And the ritual of generating this Shrauta Agni is called Agni Adhanam. And the person who has managed to light this Shrauta Agni, he has got a name. He is called Ahita Agni. This is a very exalted status for a grahastha, because only the Ahita Agni, only the person who has actually completed the Agni Adhanam, the generating of the Shrauta Agni, only after that is completed, he can do Shrauta karmas. He can do karmas which are specified in the Veda. For example, Agnihotra. So until this Shrauta Agni is lit, he cannot do the Agnihotram. But now that he has lit the Shrauta Agni at home, he can do all the Shrauta karmas which have been specified in the Veda, right? And therefore he says, Agnihotram cha swadhyaya pravachane cha. Having lit this special Agni called Shrauta Agni, now he becomes eligible to do Agnihotram, and therefore Agnihotram cha swadhyaya pravachane cha. It is the fundamental Vedic karma, the fundamental Shrauta karma to be done by the Grahastha. That Agnihotram has to be done daily, and it has to be done from the Agnihotra Agni only. And this particular Agni is supposed to be maintained lifelong. As long as the person is alive, as long as the Vedika is alive, that Agni, Shrauta Agni, is supposed to be burning 24/7 by 365 in his house. That Shrauta Agni can be extinguished only in 2 ways. One is that when this person dies, from that Shrauta Agni, one wooden piece, a brand of fire is taken, and that will light the cremation wood, the cremation block that he is on the wood used for this cremation. The cremation fire will be lit by the brand of fire taken from the Shrauta Agni. After that, the Shrauta Agni is to be extinguished because the person is no longer alive. That is one thing. Or when he takes sannyasa. Only 2 ways in which the Shrauta Agni can be extinguished. Sannyasa is also civil death. He is no longer a grahastha, so that Shrauta Agni can be extinguished. And therefore he says, may you perform the ritual as long as you are alive. So that is the Agnihotram cha swadhyaya pravachane cha. Then Atithiyascha swadhyaya pravachane cha. Entertaining the guests. Any guests that you have, any visitors that you have, Atithi Devo Bhavaha. We will see that later. Atithi is to be treated like God himself. And therefore accommodation, food, etc. all this has to come from there. Remember, in Bhagavad Gita, looking after people, good of others, was called Manushya Yajna, right? So Atitiyascha Swadhyaya Pravachanacha also falls under Manushya Yajna. And the next one is Manusham cha Swadhyaya Pravachanacha. So Manusham means fulfillment of social obligations. So as a member of society, whether it is a village or whether it is a housing society, there are always some amount of debts to be paid, amount of duties to be done, and you must fulfill all these duties. So both these together, Atitiyascha Swadhyaya and Manusham cha Swadhyaya, this falls under the broad heading of Manushya Yajna. Then we will take three of them together. So we are taking Prajacha Swadhyaya Pravachanecha, Prajanascha Swadhyaya Pravachanecha, Prajatischa Swadhyaya Pravachanecha. Right? These three you take together. These three put together come under Pitra Yajna. These three duties of the Grahastha are being talked about in this Pitra Yajna, the Panchamaha Yajna called Pitra Yajna, that is being talked about here. So Praja cha Swadhyaya Pravachanacha. Praja means having children. And the beauty of this is by including reproduction, begetting children into the Veda, what is happening? A natural instinctive act. An act which is natural and instinctive to human beings, that is being converted into a deliberate sadhana, a worship. And that is the beauty of the Veda, the most instinctive of all acts, it is converting as worship. So he says, this also you should be doing as worship only. Having children should be an act of worship. Another example, can you give me of a very fundamental activity which is converted into sadhana?
Eating.
Breathing. Where did we find that?
Bhagavad Gita.
Bhagavad Gita. Apane Juhati Pranam. Right? I hope you remember. Which chapter?
Chapter 4.
Vandana has just done that 2 days ago, I think.
Okay, right. So, Apane Juhati Pranam, BG4, right? That is the 4th chapter. Okay, so whole thing is about maintaining an appropriate attitude. And therefore, actually, this breathing, if you convert into sadhana, it can be called a prana agnihotri sadhana. Right? Now, if you have to make everything a yajna, then the time and place also is part of the yajna, right? Desha Kala is very very critical part of any yajna. And that is why time and place of eating becomes important. You have to eat at a particular place. You have to eat in a particular posture. You cannot eat while wandering around the house. You cannot eat while watching TV. You cannot eat lying down on the sofa. All this we do. But Shastra says don't. Because for you, everything is an act of worship. In the same way, having children, it's the most natural of all processes. But it has to become a ritual. It has to become a worship. And therefore, marriage is called vivaha, a sacred worship. And the lady is called sahadharma charani. The main objective is the one who walks along with you on the path of dharma. That is why it's called sahadharma charani, the one who walks with you on the life of dharma. Incidentally, Veda says artha and kama are also there. While you are walking together on the life of dharma, it is okay to fulfill artha kama also. And that is why, there are so many samskaras. There are actually 41 samskaras in the life of an individual, according to Vedic tradition. And this having a child is also called a garbhadhana samskara. It's a natural ceremony, right? There is a celebration, a sacred ritual. Okay, then you look at the next one. Prajanascha swadhyaya pravachanecha. So prajanam is the Stri Purusha Samyoga, the conjugal union, right? And here also Shankara says that conjugal union. So he writes Rito Bharya Gamanam, the appropriate time at which the husband and wife unite. That is called prajananam. So it's very important, and it is supposed to be done along with the chanting of Vedic mantras, which means what? Both the husband and the wife should be aware of Vedic mantras. So that seems like a very far-fetched story right now. So we'll not dwell too much on that. Obviously, you can't have a priest chanting the mantras, right? Okay. And why is it that the proper mantras are to be recited or chanted or at least thought about during the union with the spouse? Because the child must be a Vedic child, born in the Vedic tradition. See the beauty of the scripture, In today's world, we talk about secularism, segregation of society from religion. There is no word, that word secularism has no meaning in the Shastra. Your whole life is Vedic. Where is the question of segregating your duties? Your duty arises out of the Veda only. Okay, then the next one is Prajatischa Swadhyaya Pravachanecha. Prajatihi is the grandchild. So Shastra says that you should have grandchildren also. Right? Today, of course, if you tell your kid that I want a child, I don't know what will happen. But anyway, Shastra thinks that the child will obey you when you say, give me a grandchild. So Shastra says you should have grandchildren also. And that is why, because of these three commandments, that is why it is traditionally, the parents get so upset when children don't get married. Why? Because it is part of the command of the Shastra that you should get your children married. And not only that, the children should have grandchildren. All that is commandment of the Shastra. And of course, there is one exception to this rule. There's one exception when you are not under a duty to get your child married. What is that? There is only one exception the Shastra provides.
Acharya me.
Tanmay. Okay, Tanmay is the example. Anybody taking sannyasa, those parents are not bound by this particular rule. Okay, another thing. Dharma Shastra gives the time, it specifies the time when that person should take vanaprastha. It's very important. We all say, no, right? Sannyasa is maybe not a very practical thing, but vanaprastha definitely is. But Shastra specifies, Dharma Shastra specifies the time for vanaprastha. You know what it is? Number one is the day you have a grandchild. You are a vanaprasthi. Which means what? The day you have a grandchild, you should withdraw from all your worldly obligations. Ideally, it means go to the forest. But, since forests are no longer available, essentially you should be withdrawing from your duties. That is number one. Number two is on Shashtapurti. Shashtapurti is the 60th birthday. On the 60th birthday, you should take vanaprastha. And number three is a very, very interesting one. It says, on the first sight of your gray hair, the first gray hair which comes, you should take vanaprastha. If you have
Acharya, today that's not such a great thing, no?
Sorry?
Today with all stresses of the world, people are getting gray hair at 20.
So you should vanaprastha at that age. So these are three conditions for taking vanaprastha. Grandchild, Shashtapurti, first sight of grey hair, whichever is first. Okay, so these you should do.
Ravi, it's funny that you were mentioning that there are many parents who like to follow this Shastric injunction of this Praja, Prajana, Prajati, but those same people don't take Vanaprastha at the side of the first.
So always appropriate. You take only what you
Yeah,
want to do selectively.
selective following.
Yeah. See, that is
Om
because
Acharya.
they don't really know
Yeah.
that there is that this is the rule, right? Somebody has told them
Yeah.
that you have to get your children married. So that is easy to say, but to take Vanaprastha is not so easy to say. So that is forgotten. Yes, Vinita ji, you were
Right.
saying, yeah.
No, Acharya ji, you are also a grandparent now, so am I. So now, when the sight of your grandchild also, mortality hits you pretty badly because you realize that there's another generation now, which is so
Yeah,
probably
I
a
think
grandchild does give
we should probably
some
accept
kind
that
of
the body.
realistic.
No, you accept the body is going.
Yeah,
You know,
right,
I have
right.
accepted. See, in spite of all my asana practice, mornings are very bad because you get up with a very stiff back. You know, it takes some time before you drink your tea and
Yeah.
walk around a bit before you start to feel human again. So you
Yes,
wonder,
yes,
after
Acharya.
doing asana practice and Surya Namaskara every day, why is the body still stiff? See, there's you're getting old. When the body gets old, it
Yes,
goes through all sort of problems. Accept that, don't worry about
absolutely.
it, and that's it. That's the only way to have peace of mind. You know, if you start saying I'm doing 10, 20 Surya Namaskaras every day and yet my body is giving a problem, that's a recipe for mental disaster.
Correct.
Okay. Now
Mm.
we are looking at the other statements. So Satyamiti, Satyavacha, Rathitaraha, and Tapa iti, Tapo Nityaha, Paurushishtihi, and Swadhyaya Pravachane, Eveti Nako Maudgalyaha. So here the Shastram is talking about three rishis who were having a discussion. And these are names Rathitaraha and Paurashishtihi and Maudgalyaha. These are Nakaha. These are three rishis. And they were having a discussion. And what is the discussion? The discussion is arising from these earlier mantras. And the rishis are saying, out of all the disciplines which have been discussed in this Anuvaka 9, which is the most important? That is the discussion. Okay. So you will find that in the typical Vedic style, it gives you the opinions of others, and finally Veda will give you its own opinion. So these are the three opinions presented, and this is the Vedic opinion. So of course, as Vedikas, the Vedic opinion is most important for us. Okay. So each of the rishis mentions one discipline as the top priority. So Satyamiti, Satyavacha, Rathitaraha. So Rathitaraha is the name of a rishi. And that rishi was supposed to be an expert on the matter of Satyam. And therefore he has this title Satyavachaha. As by now you must be knowing, Satyavachaha means the one who always speaks the truth. So therefore he had a title Satyavachaha. So Satyavachaha Rathitaraha. Rathitara is the name, Satyavachaha is the adjective. So on overall, Satyavachaha Rathitaraha, Rishi Rathitaraha, who always spoke the truth. This is the name. What does he say? Satyam iti. He says that Satyam is the highest value. All other values are secondary. Obviously, the word Satyam here is not in the context of Brahma Vidya, it's in the context of Dharma Shastram, ethics. And therefore, speaking the truth, the normal Dharma Shastram value of speaking the truth, that is the meaning of the word Satyam over here. Okay. Shiksha Valli is dealing with Dharma Shastra. Therefore, here it means the verbal discipline of speaking the truth, and that is the highest sadhana, says Rishi Rathitaraha. Then the next statement, Tapa iti, Tapo Nityaha, Paurushishtihi. Right? Now, this Paurushishtihi is the name of the Rishi. What is his speciality? His speciality is Nitya Tapaha, Tapo Nityaha. He is eternally doing Tapaha. And therefore, he says Tapa iti. Tapa alone, austerity alone, is the highest spiritual sadhana. That's what his opinion is. Then Nako Rishi that Maudgalya is the father of Nako. So Nako Maudgalya means Nako Rishi, son of Maudgalya. He says Swadhyaya Pravachana Eva Iti. He says Swadhyaya and Pravachana are the highest sadhana. What is Swadhyaya? Studying. Pravachanam is sharing. You can also take it as learning to chant and chanting. But the broader meaning is studying and teaching. That is the highest spiritual sadhana. So these are the three opinions given by the three rishis. What does the Upanishad say? The Upanishad said, Tadhi tapas tadhi tapaha. Right. So this tadhi has to be broken properly. Tat hi. So tat hi tapaha. Tat hi means that itself. And what itself? Swadhyaya and pravachana. So this tadhi has to be related to the words which are spoken by Nako Maudgalya, Swadhyaya Pravachanecha. The greatest discipline, tapaha. Your word tapaha means the greatest discipline is Swadhyaya and Pravachanam. And he has repeated it once more. Second repetition is for the purpose of emphasis, saying that that indeed is the greatest tapaha, that indeed is the greatest discipline. So from the whole thing, out of all that has been mentioned in the Anuvaka, the Shruti itself ends up by saying that Swadhyaya and Pravachanam are the essential disciplines. Right? Why so? Because Shankara says in his commentary, Swadhyaya Pravachana eva tapaha. Only Swadhyaya and Pravachanam, they alone can be called tapaha. And therefore, these two are the top priority and must be followed always by every Vedic seeker. Okay, one more point I want to mention here is, in Bhagavad Gita, we talked about Pancha Mahayagnya, right? That Pancha Mahayagnya talk is being pulled out from this particular Anuvaka. Okay, now, what are the yagnyas? Deva Yagnya, Pitra Yagnya, Brahma Yagnya, Manusha Yagnya, and one more yagnya is there, Bhuta Yagnya, right? Bhuta Yagnya is not mentioned in this Anuvaka, but the other four are mentioned. So, what is Deva Yagnya? You look at the earlier one, Agniyascha Swadhyaya Pravachanecha, Agnihotram cha Swadhyaya Pravachanecha. This was in the nature of worship to the Lord, and therefore it is Deva Yagnya. Then the next part, Prajacha Swadhyaya Pravachanecha, Prajanascha Swadhyaya Pravachanecha, Prajatischa Swadhyaya Pravachanecha. It's all in the form of worship of the forefathers, Pitra Yagnya. And Brahma Yagnya. What is Brahma Yagnya over here?
Swadhyaya Pravachani.
The repetition of Swadhyaya Pravachanacha in every single sentence means what? Study the Veda and teach the Veda. So that is Brahma Yagnya. And Atithishcha Swadhyaya, Athityascha Swadhyaya Pravachanacha, Manusham cha Swadhyaya Pravachanacha is Manusha Yagnya. So 4 of the 5 Yagnyas have been pulled out from here. And the 5th one is Bhuta Yagnya, which we have to supply. It is not there in here. So with this, we'll stop for the day. And questions, if any. As you can see, it's very heavily Dharma Shastra oriented, very heavily Purva Veda oriented. But this is the only exposure that we are going to get to Purva Veda. See, in Chandogya Upanishad, out of 8 chapters, 5 chapters are Purva Veda. But due to paucity of time, when we finally do Chandogya Upanishad, we'll do only chapter 6, 7, 8, which is basically Karma Kanda. Those 5 chapters are very interesting, but they are, completely Purva Veda, which we are not doing. So here is the only place where they're getting the exposure.
Acharya, I have a question.
Yes, please.
The Agnayascha
Yeah.
and the Agni Hotrancha. So the Agnayascha spoke about the Agni, the Smartha Agni.
The
From the
Swartha and
Smartha
Shrauta Agni. Yeah, correct.
Agni. So how does that segue into, how does that meet the Agnihotram?
Because until you have the Shrauta Agni, you can't do this Agnihotram. And therefore,
So it's basically the Smartha Agni, which then leads to the Agnihotram.
no, which leads to Shrauta Agni, and from Shrauta Agni, then you can light the Agnihotram, do the Agnihotram.
Acharya, also what was Prajatishcha?
Prajatishcha is grandchildren.
Grandchildren. Okay. Thank you.
I have a question, Raviji.
Yes, madam.
So, what is the source of Panchamahayajna? I mean, the direct as it is. Is there any reference?
No, they are all extracted from various Upanishads.
And
all the Vedantic teaching which you get, in the Vedantic texts, in the Prakarana Granthas, you will find that all are based in Upanishads or in Jnana Kanda and Karma Kanda. So Karma Kanda, we don't have too much exposure, but here directly from the Karma Kanda, you're pulling out this.
Okay, so these are all pulled out and put together later on and popularized like that.
Yeah, popularized as Panchamahayajna, yes. In
Right.
fact, this
And
question I asked SPG, he said that yes, this is the source and it is pulled out from the Upanishad itself.
Okay, because somebody asked me where in Bhagavad Gita does Panchamahayajna come, the exact, and it's not there in Bhagavad Gita.
Not there in Bhagavad Gita. But unless you explain that, Karma Kanda can't be explained.
Right. No, just the source I wanted to know, because it doesn't take a mention in chapter 4 or anywhere
No, it
else
doesn't.
also
So
later.
this is a source. So as you go
Does,
through the various Upanishads, you will find the sources of all those commentaries which we did earlier.
Yeah. I think even that Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasnam is from one of the Upanishads.
It's from
Shrotasya, Manasya, something.
Brihadaranyaka. It's a very, very long Upanishad. It's from there.
Yeah, I think that's just one casual sentence somewhere in some corner, and now it is popular as the 3 steps of Jnana Yoga.
3 steps of Jnana Yoga.
Yeah. Okay, so this is also something like that then.
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, they're critical, but the beauty of the whole thing is that the acharyas have gone into long explanations about just something which appears only as 1 or 2 lines anywhere. If you just read that, you would probably skip over it. But because of the detailed explanations, now we know the importance. Okay, June, nothing from you today.
Yes, I have a question, Acharya.
Okay.
So in the beginning of the class, you mentioned the technical definition of Upasana, Saguna, Brahma, something.
Saguna Brahma, Vishaya, Manasa, Karma. Manasa Karma means mental activity. Vishaya means on the subject of. Saguna Brahman is Saguna Brahman, Lord Brahmaji, Brahma with form.
Thank you. And one second question I had was, when we were mentioning that there are some shortcuts for kind of busy people that cannot chant the whole Veda or the
I
whole
wouldn't
Bhagavad.
recommend you for the shortcuts at all. That is why both Anmay is taking the trouble of doing the chanting class.
Yeah. Yes, but
you have to chant. At least the Upanishads, you must chant. Of course, we are not doing Vedic chant. The Vedanta, the Karma Kanda, we are not chanting at all.
Yes. So, for example, like I was not born in a Vedic family, so how do I know which is my Veda, for example, or
you don't know.
I just choose one or just
no, you don't know. That's it. You are you're a Vaidika.
Okay, and so we know the Gayatri mantra, like this, the Pur Bhuva, the
Swaha. Yeah, Pur Bhuva Swaha.
So
yeah,
it comes from that part.
It's an extraction from the 3 Vedas.
Yes,
So the
So
three
it
lines of the
makes
Gayatri Mantra represent three Vedas. And further being that Bhur Bhuva Swaha represents the condensation of those three lines. And Om represents the further condensation of those three Vyaratis. Bhur
yes.
Bhuva Swaha.
So we know that the Gayatri Mantra, like it's supported by the scriptures, the statement that says that the Gayatri Mantra is a condensation of the Vedas. But when we say that the entire Bhagavad Gita lies in the last verse of the last 18 chapters, 66 verse.
If you have heard our discussion on that 66th chapter, it covers the entire. What is the
Teaching.
essence of the Veda of your Sarvadharman Parityajya means what? You should abandon all karmas, right? What is the only way to abandon karmas? By claiming yourself as Atma. And that claiming yourself as Atma is the essence of not only Bhagavad Gita, it is the essence of all the Vedas. And therefore, Sarvadharman Parityajya means abandon the body and say that I am Atma. That is why it's the essence of Bhagavad Gita.
So is this interpretation, when we say that in this verse, the entire knowledge of Bhagavad Gita lies there, is due to the interpretation of the parampara, but is not based by like scriptures reference.
It's the interpretation given by Shankaracharya.
Okay.
For us, that is the parampara.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anybody? Vandana?
Question. Yeah. So, as this is our kind of first exposure we're getting to Purva Veda,
Yeah.
my intellect is protesting a lot, because there is a lot of shoulds and must, which was not there in Vedanta, right?
Yeah.
In Vedanta, we just looked at the Panchamahayagna and we looked at the value of the values. And so that was easier to understand. Now, just take the example of people in this class, who's in Grahastha, who's in, Sannyasa ashram is not so black and white, because I think more of us are probably inclined towards Antar Sannyas, which is a process. So there is a lot of gray areas, in between. So it's not when...
but Bahya Sannyas is a very, concept which is not very strong. You can be a Bahya Sannyasi and yet you may be very deeply attached to your ashram. And then you are no sannyasi. That is why Krishna says, Nahi asanyasta sankalpa. Without having given up your sankalpas, yogi na bhavati kaschana. You remember? Krishna says that. Without having given up the sankalpas, you can never become a sannyasi. That's the critical part. That is from where this antara sannyasa interpretation comes. If you have given up your sankalpas, your desires for something to happen, then you are a sannyasi. You may have the whole, you may be as rich as maybe who's the richest person in the world, be as rich as him. But it doesn't matter. What you have to ask yourself is, if that money is not there tomorrow, will there be any change in my mind? That is Antara Sannyasa. The willingness to give up whatever you have is Antara Sannyasa. So from that definition, you should always judge yourself, not from the definition of whether you have a saffron robe or not. The saffron robe is meaningless without that mental detachment. With the mental detachment, you don't need the saffron robe.
My question was, so these shoulds and must is a lot of things which plague Indian society today, right? So while I might think I'm on the way to Antar Sannyas or whatever, for my parents, they probably, not probably, they would still be very strongly attached that I should be getting married, having kids, giving them grandkids.
Yes.
So,
but like
And that
when they
is
got
not
their
to
first
say
grey hair,
Shastra is telling you.
they got their first grey hair, they should have taken sannyas.
Not even I have.
Yeah, probably everybody has white hair right now.
Everybody should be a vanaprasthi in this particular
That's
group at
true.
least.
That
Anyway, to answer your question, I wouldn't take it very seriously because, Purva Veda is all very few people know. I think only in the mutts they still chant the Purva Veda. Otherwise, even teaching we don't teach. SP doesn't teach. Swami Dhyana doesn't teach. Swami Chinmayanda doesn't teach. Nowhere it is taught. Only in the Sringeri mutt and the similar other mutts, I think they still do the Purva Veda. As long as you know that whatever buts and ifs and do's and don'ts were covered in the Purva Veda, you can broadly classify under Karma Yoga. That's all that's required to be known. Karma Yoga and Upasana Yoga.
Did the Shastra, but are we, because we're doing it quickly, is the interpretation I'm getting is this should be done, this must be done, or these are more like the indications or kind of guidelines rather than what absolutely has to be done. How is it to be understood?
So
I mean, now that we are doing it.
there are two, it's basically there is what is known as Adhikaripan, the eligibility for studying. So the Adhikaritvam for the Purva Veda is a completely different person. The one who should abide by Purva Veda in its entirety as far as possible is the one who wants to have Chitta Shuddhi. The one who comes to Vedanta, he is no longer looking for Chitta Shuddhi. And remember that while at this point of time I am saying Chitta Shuddhi, at a certain point of time I am going to say that it doesn't matter what is the state of your mind. Why? Why does it not matter? Because you are not the mind at all. What should the state of your mind matter to you if you are not the mind? So all this run-up is a beginner's run-up. We are still doing the beginner's run-up. As long as you are touching on Karmakanda, it is always beginner's run-up. Afterwards, after this, when we go to Mandukya, you will be immersed basically in the pure nectar of Advaita. Then you will know that it doesn't matter to me because Purva Veda I have already completed. Purva Veda's objective has been fulfilled.
Thank you, Acharya.
Okay, so with this we'll stop. Thank you. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Vasishyate Om Shanti 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 Om Tat Sat Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you for your patience.
Yeah,
Om Om.